Radhe Radhe everyone. Welcome to our daily wisdom from Bhagavad Gita session. Nitinji, Radhe Radhe. Over to you, Nitinji.
Radhe Radhe, Mutavani Radhe Radhe, everyone. Thank you, Vijayji, for the wonderful session.
Radhe Radhe.
I thought cricket is called Lambadand Golpind, not cricket. Sir Sachin Tendulkar eva Lambadand Golpind Kridati.
Lambadanda Gola Prida. Eka Divasiya Lambadanda Gola Prida.
Okay.
That is good. Nice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the wonderful session. Good morning, good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to another week of daily wisdom from Bhagavad Gita. Hope you're having a wonderful start to your weekend. And we will continue on our discussion of senses, mind, intellect, and we will give it an intriguing twist today, the topic that we are discussing. So I look forward to our engaging conversation again today. Let's get started with our opening prayers. If you're joining in for the first time, very warm welcome. We'd love to have you announce yourself and take initiative in recitation as well. And we shall get started. So let me share my screen and then we will get started. Amritavaniji, is my audio clear today?
Yes, Nitinji, it's clear.
Okay. In between, if it stops to cooperate, do let me know.
Sure.
Yeah, do let me know. I can always change that, speaker. So, all right.
Sure.
Let's get started then. I will pull up my screen. Just give me a second. All right. Again, a very warm welcome. We'll get started with our opening prayers. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanurmardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagatgurum Krishnam Vande Jagatgurum. Radhe Radhe, good morning, good evening, everyone, once again. So we are coming close to the end of our third chapter. Last few shlokas, less than half a dozen remaining, 5 to be more precise, four in fact, 40, 41, 42, 43, yeah, 4 to be more precise. And we hope to wrap it up this week, latest early next week, in case one of the shlokas stretches, and then we'll get started with chapter 4. So we are making slow and steady progress. However, if we look at it holistically, we have gone beyond third chapter, picked up shlokas from 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th, 12th, 18th, pretty much, all the chapters, relevant shlokas as we do cross references as we go along. So let's get started. 3.40 is what we are going to do today. I'm going to recite this verse and then we'll pick up a few hands who feel confident, who have practiced it. You're welcome to come over and follow. If you're trying it for the first time on the session itself, I would rather give opportunity to ones who have already practiced it. So let's get started. Indriyani mano buddhi asyadhishthanamuchyate eter vimohayattesha jnanamavritya dehinam. Yes, Mutavaniji, your prerogative entirely from here on.
Sure. Just seeing who are. hands. Okay. Surendraji, please go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Radhe Radhe Surendra ji.
इंद्रियाणि मनोबुद्धि प्रस्य अधिष्ठानमुच्यते एतर्विमोहो यत्तस्य ज्ञानेर्मोह आवृत्य राधे राधे
Radhe Radhe. Thank you, Surendra ji. All right, let's take few more hands.
Sumesh, go ahead, please.
Radhe Radhe Nitin ji, Radhe Radhe everyone. Indriyani mano buddhi syadhisthanamuchyate etairvimohayatesha jnanamavritya dehinam. Radhe Radhe.
Ji, very nice. Radhe Radhe. All right, let's take few more hands. We'll do probably 6 hands today. We'll see how many we can cover quickly.
Okay. Ragi ji, go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe. Thank you.
Indriyani manobuddhir asyadhisthanamuchyate aite virmohayatyesha jnanmavritya dehinam.
Thank you very much, Pragji. Eter vimohayatyesha jnanamavritya dehinam. All right, let's take a few more hands and then we'll get started.
Samji, you can go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe.
Indriyani mano buddhir asya dishithanam uchyate itir vimohayatyesha jnanam avritya dehinam. Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Samji. Radhe Radhe. Very nice. All right, let's take a few more hands.
Yes. Rupa ji, go ahead, please.
Rupaji.
Radhe Radhe everyone.
Radhe Radhe, Rupaji.
Indriyani mano buddhir asyadishtatanam uchyate eter vimohayatyesha jnanam avritya dehinam.
Very nice. Thank you, Rupaji. All right, we'll take 2 more
Thank
and
you.
then we'll get started. Thank you.
Yes. Shamji. Yes, go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Sham.
Indriyani mano buddhir asyadhisthanamuchyate etir vimohayatesha jnanamavritya dehinam. Radhe Radhe.
Wonderful. Very nice, Shamji. Looks like you are putting your new Bhagavad Gita. You've started turning the pages there already. Very nice. I would strongly encourage everybody who has gotten their copy to send out a short video, a testimonial. I think it will be very helpful to, promote the book and have the required publicity around it. So if you could create a short video, what inspires you, especially if some shloka you have picked up or any pages that you have turned off, I think it will really help Swamiji's book to push along, because the first few days are really important to, give a kind of a launch to a book. So it will be a small seva, but I would strongly encourage you, whoever is interested, you can fill in the attendance tracker or just send a short video to me, and we can have our video team take care of it from that point onwards. All right, thank you. Let's take maybe 2 more hands and then we'll get started. I know we have some content to cover today, so.
Shali ji, you can go ahead, please. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah. Radhe Radhe Nitin ji.
Radhe Radhe, Shali ji.
Indriyani mano buddhe asyadhisthanamuchyate etairvimohayatyesha jnanamavritya dehinam.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Shaliji. Last one we'll take, and remaining will have to say sorry for today, and probably tomorrow you can get a chance. Yes, please go ahead.
Aarti ji, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Aarti ji.
Radhe Radhe, ma'am, sir, everyone.
Radhe Radhe, Aarti.
Indrayani mano buddhir syadhishthanamuchyate ete virmohayatyesha jnanamavritya dehinam.
Very nice, Aarti ji. Where are you joining us from?
From Varanasi, sir.
Thank you very much. Very nice. Look forward to hearing more from you during the sessions. Okay, so let's get started. We have a bit of content to cover today. Indriyani means the senses, mana, the mind, buddhi, the intellect, asya of this, adhishthanam, dwelling place, uchyate are said to be, eteh by these, vimohyati deludes, esha this, jnanam knowledge, avritya clouds, dehinam the embodied soul. So the short translation for the shloka goes like, the senses, mind, and intellect are said to be breeding grounds of desire. Through them, it clouds one's knowledge and it deludes the embodied soul. Let's go deeper into the shloka. It's talking about breeding ground. Now here you look at a fortress, right? It's a fortress, a pretty formidable fortress, as you can see. Killa, like they call it, right? We have Lal Killa, and then especially if you go to northern part of India, Rajasthan, there are a lot of fortresses, right? And fortresses are built to protect yourself. And this is a pretty formidable fortress, and the fortress of the enemy, it must be spotted before one can lay siege on it. Right? So if you look at it strategically, or for that matter, tactically, whenever wars are to be fought, you look at the fortress and then you try to identify the chinks in that fortress. What are the weak spots? Or strategically, what are the fronts we need to open when we declare a war? Even when Ramayana happened, different morchas were opened, across different dwars of Lanka, so that you are doing a flanking approach or trying to subdue the, army, the opposition army from all flanks. Now, a fortress is, there's a saying in English as well. So a chain is as strong as its weakest link. This is how it goes. So even in fortress, there are some weak spots, and enemies are always looking at detecting those weak spots. Right? I'm in cyber security, so it's said like the Great Wall of China. Even in security world, it is said that your whatever defenses, perimeter defenses that you build across your networks to protect yourself from external attacks, from malicious attackers, it is only as strong as your weakest link. So if we talk about Great Wall of China, it was supposed to be built as an impregnable wall. Nobody can break it. But guess what? For all the sophistication, the solidity that wall has, and the air of impregnability that this wall has, it was still getting broken. And people were wondering how people are able to get in this supposedly impregnable wall. And what was happening is, somebody was just giving some bribe to the gatekeeper and getting in. So doesn't matter how strong of a castle or a fortress you build, it is only as strong as its weakest link. Okay. Now the context in which this is being said here is, let's look at the fortress or the weakest link that we have. Right. Let's look at the different interfaces we have with this world. Right. If you see the friends lying down, actually, it's actually our five senses depicted in a way which probably is not inclusive. And then we have our mind, and then we do have our intellect. Intellect is the one which has the discerning ability, right, wrong, good, bad, all the decision-making abilities. Now, these three, in this verse, Lord Krishna is saying that senses, mind, and intellect are the places from where lust exercises its dominion over the soul. Dominion means control over the soul. These are the gateways. These are the pregnable gateways or the vulnerable spots that we have through which lust finds its ways and exerts its control over the soul. And we'll see how. Okay, so what are those? Senses, mind, and intellect. And this is how it exerts its dominion over the soul. And soul is what our true identity is, not this body. So the soul is completely under the sway of lust, thanks to or courtesy to these three friends that it has got. Okay, senses, mind, and intellect. So that is essentially what Lord Krishna is telling us in this summary, right? Like I said, the Great Wall of China, for all the defenses it has built, somebody could bribe their way through it, through a gatekeeper. Right? And no matter how strong you build something, if there is a chink in that armor, and depending upon the strength of that chink, you are as strong as the armor is as strong as the strength of that chink alone. Because if that spot is identified, you are a done deal. Same thing happened even in Ramayana. Vibhishan told that is his weak spot. Okay, for all the arrows that you are directing towards Ravan, it's not going to do in any harm until you shoot at its navel. And that's what Lord Ram did. Obviously, that was Leela. As if he didn't know, he would know that. But then Vibhishan became a nimit in that. So similarly, lust as an enemy, Lord Krishna is calling it that. He's saying that the control that it exerts over us is facilitated by these three enemies. They're not friends yet. Senses, mind, and intellect. Now let's move on. So if you look at our mind keeps on getting infatuated. Right? We've heard this word, infatuation, during our college or school days. So similarly, our mind keeps on getting infatuated. What does it get infatuated with? And how does it happen? Let's look at it. It gets infatuated by the objects desired by the senses. Right? Hand says, touch this, feel this, eye says, watch this, ear says, listen to this, and taste buds say, go for it. So same way. So the sense objects, they are desired by the senses. And then the infatuation of the mind, the seeds are already sown for that. And the senses, they infatuate the mind. It's like, we got to get it. We just go for it. Right? That punchline of Nike, just do it. That's what our senses tell us, like Nike, just do it. Because this is what is going to give us pleasure. Yes, there is some thrill, some kick we get, but that pleasure, we know that it is at our own expense, it is short-lived, it is temporary, it doesn't satiate, it comes back with a rebound effect. It's like putting fuel to fire, all the concepts we have discussed about it, right? But that is where the seeds of that infatuation are sown, and mind says, until I get that object, I will not feel happy. And you oblige the mind, say, all right, I'll make you happy. And this is how the cycle of infatuation begins. Now, under the sway of lust, sway is the influence, right? Whichever direction the wind blows, the mind also goes. It sways like completely under the spell of that. I need it, and therefore I must have it. And if I won't have it or do not get it, then I will complain, I will rebel. That's what your mind tells you. And under the sway of lust, what happens? Are you getting informed or are you getting misled? Let's look at it. Now, the mind is misleading the intellect. It's saying, go for it. This is the pleasure you have been seeking, And once you will get it, you will have that aha moment, right? Which will keep you happy for the rest of your life. And even if it doesn't keep you happy for the rest of life, that's the best I can get. So go for it. That's what our mind tells the intellect. Okay. And these are the gates. We have spoken about the mind, the intellect, and our senses, all the three, right? We spoke about that fortress, the chinks in that fortress. Although fortress may be strong, but these are the weak spots that make our soul vulnerable and succumb to the desires that keep tormenting us one after another. Every day, some desire, some sense will start tormenting you. Let's do this, let's watch this, let's taste this. This cycle just continues. Right? And our intellect simply is being led by our mind and it simply follows it. Now, intellect does assert itself or impose itself periodically, but not frequently and not often enough, because more often than not, we are under the sway of lust because it is being dictated by our mind, and mind is actually following the whims of our senses. Right? And our mind is completely infatuated with that. It's like, this is what I love. Let's continue. Now, when intellect loses its discriminatory powers, it becomes clouded. This word clouding of intellect came previously in 2.63 as well, right? When we spoke about anger, krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vidhrama, right? That the anger, it leads to the bewilderment of memory, and that leads to clouding of judgment. So this word clouded has come previously as well. So the point here being, whenever our intellect gets clouded, then what happens is it loses its USP. What is the USP of our intellect? The USP of our intellect is the discerning ability, or the ability to choose or discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. And if it loses that USP, then first of all, it becomes a redundant thing. Why do we need an intellect in that case? Buddhi goes for a toss, then mind itself is good enough. And the other thing that happens is, when that discerning ability goes away, that is the only differentiating factor human species have over other species. Animals, they don't have that discerning ability to make judgment calls, knowing what is right or wrong, or not being driven by purely by instincts or impulses. So when that discerning ability gets clouded, that judgment gets impaired, then at that point, there's absolutely no difference between an animal and a man at that point. Because that ability, that special ability that has been endowed to human species as a reward for their arduous 8.4 million journey, it is given as a reward. Okay, you've done a lot of hard work. Now become human and take yourself to the next level. But when we part or do away with that discerning ability, either because of anger or because of greed or lust, then we actually fall down to the level of an animal. And at that time, what happens? Even animals, they succumb to their immediate gratification. That's all they care for, right? And that's exactly what humans end up doing. They simply succumb to their immediate gratification of the desire of the sense object that they are looking for. It doesn't go beyond that. I just need to have it. That's where the buck stops. And it is said that in the shloka, furthermore, the commentary says that living being is deluded to become a slave of lust and will do anything to satiate it. If you look at it, it's like a puppet being controlled by those strings, and that string is nothing but lust. Lust is driving you to say, I need this. You need to fulfill my desire, and then I will feel happy. And we become slave of that, because now at this point, the intellect has stopped functioning it has gotten clouded and judgment is impaired, and the ability to discern whether it's right or wrong goes for a toss. And then knowledge obviously has to slip. When our intellect becomes clouded, our memory gets bewildered. So forget about what is good for us or bad for us. I mean, all we care for is satiating that desire, because we are in so strongly in that conception, I am this body. And the sense gratification is my primary goal in life. And only if I get this, I'll be happy. So this is how that cycle keeps on unfolding. So it actually makes us slave. Okay, you can remember this picture where you are being a puppet in somebody's hand. So anger also makes us slave, and lust also makes us slave. Our mind gets enslaved at that point. And when we become enslaved, that means we lose our power over it. We have actually empowered it so much that our desires start dictating us and defining us who we are. Right? So many drug addicts that we see, is it that they don't know it is bad for them? No, but they've gotten into that habit and now their body is demanding it. They have withdrawal symptoms. Similarly, we are so habituated to seeking enjoyment in this world that if we all of a sudden put a stop to it, our senses, our mind, even our intellect, after a while will rebel and says, no, what am I doing? What kind of an austerity it is? And it will start questioning the knowledge unless of course it is deepened enough, it will start rebelling. And the body will start throwing withdrawal symptoms, all kind of reasons, justifications why you should go for that. That's because it is habituated to being a slave of its senses since multiple lifetimes, infinite lifetimes. That's what we have done as humans, and it's not easy to break that habit. Even for a chain smoker, it's not easy for them to come out of that habit. So when we say we need to be reborn because I want to enjoy this, like it's like a chain smoker saying, all right, I get the message, I need to quit, okay, but at least one smoke a day, is what I'm going to regulate. So because it's very difficult to give it up all of a sudden. Right? So that's where I think it's a gradual process, and then we need to dismantle this habit very systematically. Now, this is an enslave, how we can become a slave of lust. Let's move on. Now, are these bad? That question would come. Now, why do we have these mind, senses, and intellect if these are the gateways, vulnerable gateways that we have, which can be exploited, which our mind keeps on exploiting our senses, we keep falling to the whims of our mind and senses. So are they bad in themselves? That is the question. Now, these instruments, they are not bad in themselves. Actually, they have been provided to us to reach the goal, because we need the ability to discern. Only when we have a choice is when we can choose something over another. If we don't have a choice, there is no difference between us and machine, us and a robot at that place, right? If you have seen movie Terminator, the machines, they develop to such an extent that they are able to discern who's an enemy and who's not. But are they truly having a free will? No. That is also recursive learning, and end of the day, don't have a free will. It's all programmed. But humans, they're not programmed. And why? The very fact they have an intellect and an ability to choose is because then they can progress and choose things what are beneficial for them. So these three things are not bad in themselves. It's our own undoing where we have permitted lust in its many forms to lay siege on them. And we will see through an example how and why. And what happens because of that is we keep going further and further away from our goal and keep on getting sidetracked towards lower goals in life. So these three can actually be propelled or channelized to catapult our spiritual journey. However, since we have not used it to their true potential and have been using it for things that we think are going to give us happiness, because of lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, or purely short-term benefits that we seek, right? Instant gratification, it appeals to everyone. Everybody likes to see immediate results. There's the guy who says, okay, Guruji, tell me who's God, but then I have just 30 minutes. I have an important meeting to catch. So we all like to see immediate results. Nobody has time, patience, or tenacity to sail through and look, get results, which take their own due course of time. And because of which, what happens is we get sidetracked towards lower goals. And what are those lower goals? Let's look at that. Yes, Artiji, you had a question.
Artiji, you can please go ahead. You have been unmuted.
Hari Om, Radhe Radhe. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, Artiji, Hari Om.
Super audible.
Radhe Radhe. Good morning. We have anger, we have lust. What about depression? How does it comes into picture? Because even if that comes, our intellect again get clouded. People are not able to do work. They become so lethargic to, why should I do this? They just cannot even get up from the bed. So
let me give it a try. Basically, I may not be an expert on this topic, but let me try to explain as best as I possibly can. Probably one of the discussions we are going to have may be able to link it to that. Now, there is something called a climate and there is something called a weather, right? Now, a climate is a sustained weather over a period of time. Like let's say, for example, we say the climate of this place is pleasant, or the climate of this place is dry and very hot. But but the weather can keep on changing, but a weather that persists over a period of time and you can associate to that particular place is called a climate, right? Mussoorie is known for its cold climate, Himachal is known for its cold climate, Rajasthan is known for its hot climate. Doesn't mean where you have hot climate the cold will not come, or the other way around as well. Where you have cold, the heat will not be there. Those spells are there, but predominantly it stays a certain way. That becomes a climate, right? Similarly, the kind of sentiments, thought process we harbor, and that is what we are going to discuss a little bit in, I think, next slide. Maybe we can revisit this question. They start becoming our mindsets, and those mindsets start defining our personality. So if we continue to remain in a particular mindset, especially when things don't go as per our plan, or we develop an outlook of pessimism and negativity towards world, then it can result in those kind of thought processes as well, right? I mean, reversals happen in life, bad things also happen in life. Things that do not go in accordance with our plan do also happen with our life. Now, does it result in developing a negative outlook towards life and we start playing the same tune in our head repeatedly? Probably leads to one of these things. Now, few things could be hereditary or otherwise, medical profession can explain that better. But I think some of it is probably acquired just based on the outlook that we have towards world, or the knowledge that we have activated in our intellect, right? So if something bad happens to us and we start thinking this whole world is bad, why me? Other people are happy. Why is it that these kind of things happen to some people only? And you start harboring those thoughts in your mind repeatedly, then it can lead to those kind of energies, which can lead to depression in turn as well. So, but anyway, let's visit that because some of it might have to do with some medical things as well. I'll not get into that. We'll probably continue with that discussion. So please reserve your comments on that because I'm going to get into that topic a little bit. The two natures that we have. So maybe that helps you answer a part of this question. But like I said, whatever we harbor in our mind, it's like neuroplasticity in our brain. Those channels start getting formed and those have thought patterns, they start coming naturally to us. We can break it. We do have an ability. Our brain is said to be extremely malleable. Malleable, if you have heard in chemistry, it's like you can actually mold it. So the kind of thought patterns you start choosing or force yourself to choose with proper knowledge, that is how our mind becomes. And you can actually acquire a very positive, optimistic outlook towards things around you as well. That is also possible. So it's not that it's impossible to get out of a particular mindset and it becomes something that you have to perpetually live with. Maybe that helped you a little bit, RPG, but let's continue and come back to this topic again, because we have a bit of a discussion around this only. So these are the three things we have been talking about: intellect, mind, and our senses. Now, they were given to us for the purpose of God realization, right? That was the true purpose of these. However, we got hung up in the toys, material toys, and that's where we want to get stuck in. We just want to be there. That's about it. Okay, maybe not this life, another life. I didn't get this time. Next time I want to get this. So that is where we get hung up, losing the big picture. And in the process, we end up becoming enslaved by our minds. It is said mind is a bad slave, a master, but a good slave. The process we need to reverse. So, like this Japanese proverb says, be the master of your mind, then be mastered by your mind. So, right now, the relationship that we are established with our mind is that being of a slave more often than not. We just need to become its master, take control over it so that it starts becoming our friend and not our enemy. Now, moving on, we'll get into that part. I think it's going to touch upon a little bit upon the topic that we spoke about and build on that discussion. So you can see, okay, we have two people standing on that seesaw, and as we can see, one is outweighing the another one, right? Now, if we look at in our lives, it's easy for us to get angry, choosing anger as opposed to tolerating something. Right? So that is one end. Anger usually overpowers our ability to tolerate something with proper knowledge, of course. It's easy to envy or become jealous. However, it is difficult to choose the other sentiment, being neutral about it. It's easy for us to become greedy as opposed to showing contentment, santosh. I think in Ramayana it is said that there are three things we always need to feel content about: amount of wealth we have, the kind of food we get, and the kind of spouse we have gotten. Okay, need to be content with that, not greedy with that. The pessimism, skepticism, it's easy for us to fall prey to that in life, right? That manifestation of that could actually lead to depression as well, right? Pessimistic, skeptic, this whole world is like this, everybody's out to get everybody. Our politicians are like that, people are like that, boss is like that, companies like that, everybody's like that, right? That, and this whole world is a mess. So that is easy rather than having optimism or hope. And then hatred, resentment, it's easy to fall prey to that as opposed to having love, empathy, and compassion. And last but not the least, becoming lazy rather than being disciplined. Right. So it's just like you look at the swimmer, right? There's a bit of an elevation he's swimming against. It's like swimming against the tide. So let's have a bit of a discussion on that. What is it that makes us easy to outweigh the emotions, the positive emotions that we have? So let me continue here. There is a lower nature and there is a higher nature we have. And we are always, more often than not, easy for us to succumb to lower nature, and takes effort to actually tap into our higher nature. And the more we are associated to our lower nature, the more we are likely to have those kind of mindsets and thought process, or a convoluted thought process, or a lot of clutter in our head, and all the things that we want to stay away from. So let's have a bit of a discussion before I move to the next slide on this. I'll stop share for a bit and share it again with my phone so that, okay, are you able to see the screen? Okay, now we can take a few hands to continue this discussion. And RPG, please feel free to chime in if you have any follow-up question, or did that throw a little bit of light on what you asked? let's get started, and then we'll move to our next slide because I have a little bit more to discuss on this topic.
Kumarji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Nitin ji.
Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe Amritswani ji, and Radhe Radhe everyone. I just wanted to comment on what Aarti was speaking about. Is this a good time, or do we need to table it to the end?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So, I'm no expert. Let me put the disclaimer first in place. But I did go through a bout of depression, right? So, thinking back at it, right? Now, thinking during it is so difficult. Thinking rationally during the time is very difficult. So the best thing which I did was I had a very good set of people around me. Okay, one is my brother, one of my closest friends, and of course I did take some help from professional as well. Luckily, I didn't have to take any medicine, but sometimes some people do need that as well. But what I see is negative thoughts, right? The negative thoughts somehow come into your mind, and then you kind of keep on repeating it. Like, what Swamiji says, right? Now, during the time, if you try to view Swamiji's videos, that wouldn't make sense either. It's such a state at the time. So when you're good, go and listen to Swamiji's lectures, come to these sessions and try to understand it, and try to make it a habit to believe that God is there for everyone. He's the one guiding our lives. He's not going to ruin us. And keep that steadfastly in our mind. And that's the only way not to go into a depression. But once you go into that, you just need some friends, a good family member, parents or your siblings. They are your best help. So I try to summarize it in the 2 minutes given, but we can talk later if need be as well. Thank you. Radhe Radhe.
Wonderful, Kumarji. I think the personal experience always adds more authenticity to that. Beautiful point you brought up, right? It's like there's a saying in English which says that we don't dig a well when the house is on fire. So we can take preventive measures around it by tending to our mind, the kind of thoughts we are harboring, and that's where this knowledge comes in handy beforehand. When you're already into that, then obviously the situation is already gone out of hand, and then you can do some damage control around it, and need a good ecosystem of friends, people, and possibly doctors as well, to help you come out of it. But then the real test of this knowledge is how you are able to call upon this knowledge when these kind of situations start happening with you in your life, right? And not succumb to your lower nature where you have anger, frustration and thinking about something, why it didn't happen a certain way, or thinking your yardsticks of success that you define are met, they are not meant. That means it's a failure or something bad has happened to us. Getting into that rut of pessimism, skepticism, then it becomes increasingly difficult for sure, right? In Canada, they say there's a something called rut. Rut is like once you choose a particular snow path, it says choose your rut wisely, because once you are stuck in a particular rut, you cannot take a U-turn. You are stuck in it for 10 or 15 kilometers. So it's very important to choose our rut wisely when it comes to our thought process as well, because one will lead to another, to another, to another. And it's like the kind of energy we associate with, whether it's negative or positive, it brings more of its own kind. So if you think these lower nature things, if you start getting into one, it will bring more of its own kind. You may get anger, envy, all those things will start flooding your mind. And on the contrary, when you start associating with positive energies, it will have the completely opposite effect. However, we get outdone by negative energies more often than not, because it's like swimming against the tide. So let's continue this discussion. I can see quite a few other hands as well. So I'm sure they can add more inputs to the discussion that we are having.
Seemaji has written, depression is an advanced symptom of chronic melancholy moods.
Melancholy, yeah, melancholy can happen. The sense of being alone, not having that sense that, because we have not brought God into the equation at all. We think we are alone, right? We put so much of faith around people around us and think, they define our success and failure in our life. If we have them, that's good. If we don't have them, we are alone. So yes, and that's a manifestation of melancholy and a prolonged pessimistic thought process as well. Okay, let's continue. I can see quite a few other hands raised.
Ramya ji, you can go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Ramya ji.
Radhe Radhe Nitinji. I just wanted to answer this question. Why we succumb to our lower nature easily than the higher nature. I feel somehow we are programmed that way by nature. Like if you see generic with all human beings, it's like, the current, what you said, and you have to swim against the tide. The tide is programmed such a way to pull us to our lower natures, and I don't know why God made us that way. That's a question, but I
Blame
feel
it on God.
I really don't know. I feel it's I mean it's like very natural. Even if you look at a kid, if at 2 or 3 years of age he sticks for the toy, and a kid always wants the toy which the other kid has. He doesn't need the toy till another kid doesn't touch it. Once another kid touches it, and that is the point. Once the sibling touches it, that is the point that this kid needs the same toy. So it's not that we have got it over a period of time or something. I see it at the age of 2 or 3 when I've seen the kids at home. So I somehow make it to feel that maybe I've been programmed that way, or is it from our past lives which have come? I don't know, but I see this tendency in a very, very young age.
Okay, yeah, fair point. Yeah, we have to understand the kid, it's not his first birth either, right? So it is a practice of so many lifetimes where it gets so deeply ingrained in us that it almost seems like we've been programmed it that way, right? But who has initiated that program? We ourselves only. So that is where we need to get better at it. On the contrary, I've seen kids who would share things as well, maybe because of their past scars. Something is there, but the kids are also not having their first life, right? So some of the survival instincts that kick in because of our prolonged practice of certain mindsets, I think they kick in fairly early in our life. But God is not programmed us that way. It's our own doing. We are the authors of our own nature. And that's where anything that is worthy in life is actually something that we have to work for. And that is how this has been designed. Because if everything is given to us on a platter, we'll not be able to value it. So everything, when you get that, see, it's easy to get for us to get angry and get that immediate satisfaction. But if we can actually tolerate it and get better at it, it's even more liberating. But we don't get ourselves to experience that part. When we do, we know it's much higher than that, right? And same thing with the contentment. It does not bring in restlessness, like looking at somebody else, having that, anxiety, envy part of it. Optimism, hope, it just changes your outlook, the entire vibe around you. And pessimism, skepticism changes your vibe around as well, right? You can just make it can chisel the contours of your face as well. People who are pessimistic and skeptic and always thinking, something bad is going to happen, you can actually see that vibe. That is how powerful these energies are. Love, empathy, compassion. If somebody has a lot of that filled up in their heart, obviously they will also exhibit a different kind of an aura. So it's not something that cannot be inculcated. It's just that it demands some effort, and the effort would come when we are intellectually convinced they are important. And the way to intellectually convince ourselves is to arm ourselves with the right kind of knowledge. So it has to follow that process. Yes, let's continue this discussion. There are quite a few other hands raised as well.
Aarti ji. Aarti, Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, Aarti ji.
I just have a request. Could you, sir, please the previous slide, just previous one to this.
Previous one, okay. So did you have a question or?
So it was not this one.
Was there a question, Aarti? I can answer for that.
Question is again the same, sir, regarding depression only. That my sister had a government job but her family is, due to the sustained alcoholic addiction. Her husband went through thrice liver damage and kidney problems. Finally, she went in such a depression that she quit doing everything. Looking after the children, looking after the husband, doing the job, even looking after herself. She was limited to bed. What was that? Nothing could, take her out of it. And it is just nearly a year is passing. And not even ready for medication also.
It's a very subjective thing. I know it's very unfortunate if it happens to somebody. We can talk about it, philosophically, what our scriptures are telling, because each situation is unique, right? And um, it's not fair to actually analyze what's happening with her. But I can tell you examples, even worse has happened with people and they are still able to sustain their lives, right, with an attitude. If you can fill in your attendance tracker, I'll send you some case studies around people. If you think they had every reason to feel depressed about their life or even to end their lives, still they chose to be positive in life, and what they ended up making their lives, you can see it for yourself. What is the difference between people who who choose happiness even in such dire circumstances where they lose their family, where they are subjected to tortures in life, where they are born with handicaps that ordinary people can't even think how did they live even for a day. What made them different from people who are able to, who break, just a couple of incidents in their life can break them for the rest of their life? What is the differentiating factor? Are they made up of metal or something else? No, they are ordinary people in flesh and blood. And that is where we have to take refuge in proper knowledge that comes from scripture, which tells us that it is a choice. It is a choice you make in your life. And if we have not acquired that resilience ahead of time, it's very difficult actually to cope up with these kind of situations, circumstances when it happens. You cannot just acquire this knowledge at that time, right? This is a medicine that is, you arm yourself with it when things are going well. So there might be different reasons for that. All I can say is it is unfortunate, but the fact that we are sitting here, actually, it's a great opportunity to arm ourselves with all the tools that we need to progress on this path and to face the challenges of life with confidence and with certainty. That's all I can tell. If you fill in your attendance tracker, I'll send you a few examples. Read through that, and it's for you to decide what might be the difference. Why it would break some people, and at the same time, some people continue moving ahead in life with the right perspective. What is the difference between those kind of people? They're people like us, right? So there must be some trick or something that has clicked for them, and that something is for us to identify and implement in our lives. Okay, let's continue then.
Padma ji, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe.
Padma ji.
Radhe Radhe. I just want to talk about few things, and then I want to specifically talk about Artij's sister. So life will give us different kind of situations. Maybe somebody will lose their job. Something happened to their family. Something happened in their life. These are all the different things that we go through. But there is a fine line between our selective choice of going either coming to this side of the line or that side of the line, where pain actually becomes suffering. Pain is a natural process that comes to us with situations which come to us, but it is our choice from where we go from pain to suffering. So it is our choice whether we want to stay in pain and deal with pain, or whether we want to make that pain as suffering. That is number one thing. Number two thing, fundamentally, in any situation when the pain comes to us, let's say it was your job that you worked very, very hard. You have committed yourself to the job, and then you thought that you were going to actually progress in the job, but something happened and you lost the job. So and we're depressed, or we feel really bad about it. The reason why it happens is because we have given that particular piece of information, whatever, whether it's a job or a situation or a person, so important that we are in pain. And but many people are not able to actually address what is the real pain. And what happens, I feel, is it is important that you really truly identify what is that really hurting you. Is it that you lost the job? Is it that the pride that you took in the job? Is it that what people will say to you? What is that one thing which is really bothering you? Because when you hit the nail on the head, it will really help you to come out of that situation. Like, because what happens is when you're stressed, when you're in pain, and when you turn your pain into suffering, everything accumulates and it becomes a bigger problem than what you really have. So it's important that you narrow down what your pain is. One thing, what is that really bothering you? And regarding Artij's situation, I'm assuming that Artij's sister is in India. Many times the environment itself will kind of support that kind of behavior and not have enough supports, right? So even though RTG might have that enough knowledge, probably the sister is not proactive. So when people are going through pain, when people are going through suffering, they might have an intention of wanting to help themselves, but until the external forces come into play, the support structures come into play, it is not going to happen when they're at that stage of depression. So truly, we cannot just say she's not understanding. In that state of mind, she's not going to get it. It becomes the people around them to give her the support, the baby steps that she needs to get out of that process. That's what I feel.
Beautiful points, Padmaji. I think that's really great points that you brought out around this whole thing, and let's continue with this conversation. I'm sure you're going to expand more on the portrait. And one thing I really liked was we have to go to the root of it. What is it that is hurting us? Is it our pain? Is it our comparison with others? Is it what people will say? That self-awareness needs to be there, which will help us identify what is causing us misery here, right? And you beautifully said that, right? Pain is inevitable, misery is optional. If we continue to live in that pain and keep on harboring those thoughts, then it will turn into misery, right? And then it can turn into a lot of other things as well, including depression. So we have to really have that awareness. What is it? And tomorrow we're going to have that discussion on that topic itself. I chose that particular topic for tomorrow. Allodoxaphobia, it is called, where we think about what people are going to say. A lot of our lives is dictated by that fear, what people will say about us, that the projection of our image in eyes of people, we are really worried about it. We are really concerned about it. And that dictates a lot of our thought process, a lot of decisions in our life as well. We'll pick that up topic tomorrow. Let's continue. I can see quite a few other hands. So let's continue on this discussion.
Hital Patel ji.
I think it's a very I wouldn't say it's a depressive topic to talk about depression, but I've been also suffered that too. So a couple of my 2 cents on this is simple. One of the practices is pranayama, and I think I learned through, again, I'm gonna say very appreciative and very grateful to have a JK Yoga into my life. Pranayama would help me, and also meditation. Those 2 things. Not only that, but the regular visit to temple, they have a positive vibes, right? So when you go to the temple, that positive vibes can change all that, your aspect, your thinking. You sit down there, you just stay there for a couple of even minutes or even 1 hour if possible. I think that outlook get changed. That's what I noticed myself. And that's what I sometimes, when I frequently, we all have to go through, right? All this thing, what Padmaji just said, that we all have to go through the pain in the life. That's the situation comes in, we have to take it and we have to move on. But at the same time, it's not easy to get out as well. Sometimes it's a physiological change, and that physiological change, maybe your body might be changing something, or maybe your hormones or as such other things, other disease or something has been developed that also could contribute to your depression as well. And here is the slide itself. It says that the lower nature and higher nature, right? Quitting the lower nature, and that is the best things. And I think growing up, we've gone through everything. We've gone through anger, we've gone through envy. As a kids, somebody was talking about, as a kids, we don't have any such thing that affliction at all. But as we move on, when we go in each stage, elementary school to the middle school to the high school, and then after colleges, we have a competitions. Then at the same time, envy come up. And then after we come into the corporate, then greed comes. And then when we start playing the politics in the office, then the hatred comes, resentment comes. And then after we say, okay, what is all worth it? And then we become lazy. But instead of that, we just let it go, everything, and just accept the higher nature. That's the solutions. That's it.
Beautiful point, Setalji. I think one of the running themes here is that prevention is better than cure, right? You just tackle it upfront before it snowballs into something bigger. And that is where I think if we can give our kids a foundation, spiritual foundation, that will be the biggest asset for them in the times to come. Because when life starts throwing the challenges or the curveballs their way, they would know how to see it in perspective and deal with it. Because for us, it's like we are not able to proactively take charge and anticipate problems. We think life is going to be a smooth sail throughout, a rosy bed, and when a problem comes, all of a sudden it's like, oh, something bad happened. But yes, I think you said it rightly. There are a lot of other factors in play, and once you're already dealing with it, it can become really problematic or difficult to come out of it. But more we are attuned to, getting tuned to the positive frequencies, like going to temple or having those things built in, into our day-to-day routine, the lesser are the odds of us falling into, the lower nature. At least we can minimize it to a certain extent. Great point. Thank you so much, Hetalji, for coming forward and sharing that. In fact, it said that every fourth or fifth person on this earth is dealing with some kind of a depression, right? It may not be clinical depression, but some kind of a depression. That is a statistic, I think, of present world, something around that mark. Yes, let's hear from other participants. Before Amrita Vanaji, you can make the announcements and then we can.
Sure. A quick comment. Juanji says, Radhe Radhe, I feel that depression is a result of prolonged unhappiness in someone's life and a sense of helplessness that they cannot do anything about it.
Very true.
Could be combination of one's family life, job, etc.
Could be what we attach a lot of value to, thinking that defines our happiness, or that defines our success, or that defines our self-projection of our own self. Could be anything. When that is hampered, that is what can happen. That is dictated by the kind of knowledge which is activated in our intellect, that this is really, really, really important for, right? That is what the impediment to that can cause us to feel pessimist and sad about something. Yes, let's hear out from the remaining. I can see real quick, maybe a minute each, and then we'll have Amrita Vanaji for the announcement.
Smita Hegdeji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Radhe, everyone. For me, I would like to say that it is either a person confines himself or herself in a boundary that leads to the depression, or the expectancy is so high, the goal is so high, and if they're not able to reach to that expectancy, they get into depression. So these are two possibilities. So when my first child was born, our expectancy was that he, like others, do certain things at a particular time. But when he didn't do, then when we got to know that it was cerebral palsy, there was non-acceptance from our side. Then we were into such a bad state that we were running out everywhere, trying out, and we were angry on ourselves, what went wrong. But when there was acceptance, it was me first who accepted, rather than sitting and brooding and crying. And I started what we could do something better with him than thinking that this is not there with him. So now I see there is a lot of difference in my son, and he is doing much better than most of the teenagers of that age.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So you think the acceptance actually brought in that change, the fact that you accepted it could have contributed to that as well? Okay, it could be a way of God telling us that, once you've learned the lesson and brought the acceptance around it, I'm going to smoothen out the circumstance.
Yes, that was acceptance. So
Very
when
nice.
you accept things, that then you can go ahead in life. So
Very true.
acceptance is the main reason that you can come out of any situation.
Wonderful. Great point. In fact, if you look at it actually, even technically, if you look at it, if you don't bring in acceptance, what happens? Does anything change? Nothing. But it is an opportunity forfeited to actually do something about it for ourselves as well as towards that Karam Yoga aspect as well, right? So it's not that if we don't have an acceptance, it's going to change things for us. No, it's not. And the sooner we bring in acceptance, the better off we are. And that is more closer to the spiritual principle as well. So great point. And sometimes when we bring in acceptance, even the circumstances change because probably the lesson that was hidden in that situation is learned, so even the situation eases out. Great point. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's hear from some of the participants.
Annapurna ji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Radhe Annapurna ji.
Where is it? Okay, let me see.
We can hear you, Annapurna ji.
Am I muted me?
Yes, yes, you have been.
Okay, okay. I just want to say that, about depression, I think a certain depression, they are due to situational depression. What Aarti, when what she was telling, according to her sisters is situational depression, which you have to, accept that things that you cannot change, I think, and then try to improve on it, just like, Sindhu Satpal and Viktor Frankl, all the problems that they faced, they accepted and, never want to be the victim of that again and again. They made a perfect choice to be happy. Nobody can take away from them. I think that one. And other depression is medical depression, which is, genetic, and also it is due to lack of imbalance in the chemical. I think that one, lot of counseling and then maybe medicines and those things, that's what I have attended some meetings with my husband on this, he's a physician. So what I have gathered, so I thought I can share that.
Wonderful, Annapurna ji. Beautiful points. Please fill out the attendance tracker, all of you. Annapurna ji, you got in a lot of good points around this topic. Yes, depression. I mean, if you get into that medical, then obviously you need a lot of guidance. Even the second most trying for the human life. So then. Okay. Yeah. So I think at that situation, you would definitely need medical help around it. But I think we are focusing more on that preventative aspect of it, how we can, minimize the odds of that happening, especially because of our lack of understanding around things and situations around us. Let's hear from, I can see a couple of other hands, and please fill out the attendance tracker, rest of you, and then we'll continue. Yes, I can see a few hands.
Shikha ji, Radhe Radhe, please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Shikha ji.
Radhe Radhe ji, Radhe Radhe Nitin ji. Radhe Radhe everyone. Well, I would like to say on the moment you understand that it's your responsibility to take care of yourself, I think half of the depression goes because usually what happens that we tend to blame things on others, and we feel that whatever situations are coming in our way, it's because of someone else. But the moment we understand that it's our responsibility, or maybe there's something, some karmic pattern or something it is attached to that thing, and we try to resolve it instead of becoming a victim. So I feel that the situation gets, like, half of the problem gets solved once you start taking action, like maybe taking a help of any mentor. It can be in terms of the spiritual terms, or if somebody wants to take an advice of a medical person, that is also suggestible. But I think you need to take certain actions instead of going deep down in that zone and feeling more depressed. So in terms of spirituality, you can maybe just start by chanting or just sitting for some time and journaling, like what is going on in your life, what are the negative things which you're experiencing, and how can you resolve them. And also, like, in terms of affirmations and just listening to some good like for example, attending sessions like, the Bhagavad Gita sessions or any other session. But these, once you feel depressed, you don't feel like doing all of it. So maybe just starting with some chanting, or, listening to some good music in terms of like, some mantras, like, Om Trambakam, like, Mahamrityu Jap, or Radhe Krishna mantra, anything like that. So I think anybody can start with that.
Yep. Great point. I think you gave some really good tools around, journaling or chanting, reciting, just gaining more awareness around it and being able to spell it out for yourself. Wonderful tools around that. In fact, like we're discussing, if you look at some of the stories, you can actually draw a lot of inspiration from people like Sindhutai Sapkal, I think her name came up. Helen Keller is one. You can look at Viktor Frankl. There's one lady called Arunima Sinha. So many examples are there. These people, the kind of tragedies and the tribulations they went through in their lives, you would imagine what was the incentive for them to continue living in this life. And still, they did not give up. They made something out of their lives. That is kind of an attitude that they have. Where did they acquire it from? Probably, they worked on their minds in one of their previous lifetimes and they were able to draw on that inspiration, even in that moment of despair, to brighten up their lives ahead. So we can draw inspiration from a lot of quotes and a lot of tools that Shikhaji brought in. So wonderful about that. All right. Any closing comments from anybody? Like I said, please fill out the attendance tracker. And if you can send out maybe a short video for testimonial for Swamiji Bhagavad Gita book, I think it will be really nice and a great seva actually towards that. And if we are feeling benefited from, reading his Bhagavad Gita like we do every day. Yes, any closing comments? 1 minute each. I know we are over time. Please fill out the attendance tracker, and then Amutamaniji, over to you for the announcements, and then we can conclude our session.
Yes, Nitinji. Nitinji, I would like about the volunteering. If anybody is willing to do any kind of volunteering seva,
yes,
please to put it in that tracker also, so that we can.
And it will not be a huge commitment. It will be like you can get started, maybe finding out some key quotes from Bhagavad Gita. Could be in any small way where you can spend maybe an hour a week. That will suffice as well, because we always need help. And whatever you can extend, that will be wonderful. You can just mention it, and we'll definitely work out the logistics around it as well. Thank you for calling that out.
Seemaji, please go ahead. Radhe Radhe.
Yeah, Radhe Radhe, everyone. I think I agree with Padmaji, what she was saying. When a person is in severe depression, which is an advanced symptom of chronic melancholy, which is extreme sadness, moods, then one is not able to even think of anything, even bodily needs of sustaining their body and their mind. So what they cannot even look for an exit out of their circular motion of melancholy. So external support system, like Padmaji was saying, is a good stimulant in piercing and opening into their psyche, and then propelling them towards removing those impediments in micro steps. And that is where external sources are needed. They cannot do these things on their own. And if there other people are involved in helping them with all the suggestions that everybody has been given, once they are awakened a little bit to help themselves. Thank you. That was all I could say.
Thank you very much, Seemaji. I'm sure you can explain further on this, the portal. Great points, and you touched upon some of the technicalities around it as well. So thank you so much for that. All right, are we done, or do we have?
We have 4 hands raised.
RPG, I think. Okay. Or who do we have? Any real quick 1 minute each? Probably.
Okay. Real quick. I'll them. They'll be real.
Sure.
Marji, thank you for waiting. Please go ahead.
Radhe Radhe, Nitinji, Amritawani-ji, and everyone. So just to add to my comments, I think some very good suggestions were given. One thing which I found useful was the gratitude journal. But also I want to say that if you try to write a gratitude journal when you're down, you will not be able to think of anything at all. So having said that, I want to give a practical tip to Aarti ji. It's good that she has brought this thing up in this meeting. There are two associations which help people who have a drinking issue. Alcoholics Anonymous is for people who have been drinking, who have a drinking problem and are trying to get rid of it. There is also an association called Al-Anon, AL-ANON. This is for people, relatives, close relatives, or even friends who are affected by this person who has a drinking problem. And I can tell for a fact that one of my colleagues, her husband had that drinking issue, and she said that she had come just from India, and she said Al-Anon was the only association which kept her, in a sane position. Her sanity was only because of that. So Aarti's sister could try that. Thank you, Radhe Radhe.
Thank you, Kumarji, for sharing that. Yeah, I think the peer groups around that, and the support systems around that are very important, because then you feel you are not alone, right? The kind of troubles, the kind of challenges your mind is throwing at you are being shared by a lot of people, and that itself gives you a lot of hope around it. So I think that's a great way actually to combat some of it once you're already into it. Thank you for sharing that. And Aarti, if you need more, maybe Kumarji can text you on the side or provide you that information. Great point. All right.
Padmaji, please go ahead.
Radhe, ma'am, thank you for giving me an opportunity again to put forward my heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you. Amidst of, hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Aarti.
Yes, amidst of all the discussion, it was like goosebumps came, as if I was feeling God one after the other giving suggestions. It is the God inside each one of us, kind, compassionate, who is guiding. And I'm so thankful for this wonderful satsang group that God bestowed upon me, and being so merciful. So I'm so thankful to each one of you. Sir, I would like to know about this Al-Anon. Is it a website? Sir, what it is?
It's a group, actually. It's a association. It's available worldwide. It's there in India as well. So I can probably text you that website.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Aarti, you can give me you can post the number in the chat window. I'll forward it to Kumarji.
Yeah,
thank you.
Put it in the attendance tracker. That way you don't miss it out. Okay. Great. I think it was through Providence we had this discussion. I'm sure it was not meant to be towards this, but there was a good reason. I think is that this whole discussion got directed towards that. I'm sure a lot of good has come out of it, and a lot of people would have benefited from it. So thank you. And it was pure providence, I can say. All right, let's quickly hear Padmaji and Chikagi, and then we can call it quits.
Go ahead, Padmaji.
So I'm still assuming that Aarti's sister is in India. Just like Seemaji was saying, and I'm pretty sure Aarti is listening, for her sister to actually have a hope, she needs to be motivated, right? She needs to be motivated, whatever the means that Aarti can give. And one important thing, when you're in a situation like this, the self-care is also important for the people who are willing to provide that help for somebody else. That means Aarti also, right? She's concerned, but that concern needs to change, like from concern that needs to become care. And whatever the tools that she can acquire, and she needs to be stable, and she needs to take care of herself before she can take care of the sister, where she can go from hopeless, not motivated at all. So these are like little baby steps, and we're all here to help her. The transition will only happen if a person is motivated. If the function is always function of life, but we are not finding the purpose of life, that is the little change that we're all looking for within ourselves. Like if you're just functioning as a life, but we are looking for the purpose, then that change will come within them. In her sister, like I have a purpose towards my kids, I have a duty towards my kids, that will motivate motivate her to take the right steps so that she can care for herself first, at least for the kids. So that thought process, if she can instigate in her sister, that will be really, I feel, a game changer.
Beautiful point, Padmaji. You need to get that purpose. Why do I need to take care of myself, right? And not let your misery, drown you so much that you become careless around that as well. Beautiful point. I'm sure you all can help out RPG. So if you have anything, I can probably direct you to, some lot of good points are coming, and I know it's coming from their own experience, depths of realization. So that will definitely help you. So thank you so much for that, Padmaji. Last one, I think Shikaji had something to chime in as well.
Go ahead, Shikaji.
Radhe, Radhe ji, I just want to share one point. So what happens, and I think other people also share this thing that, being a part of a community, but it happens that, when we feel really depressed, we don't want to, share our problems to anybody. We don't want to see anybody. We don't want to attend anything, but, just taking an initiative. So I'll just share my example. Like in 2014 or something, I was going through like self-doubts and everything. I wouldn't say depression, but, just a very, like, when you shift to some other place from your hometown, you face little issues and everything. So I joined this community. I think it's like one of my seniors, she was doing it, and I joined this community. And when I went for the first meeting there, so I have seen that, people are so happy, like, and at the same time, sometimes we feel that when we stay in our own cocoon, we feel that the problem is like we are the only people who are going through some problem. We don't know that what suffering is there out there in the world, like that people who are suffering too much, like, people don't have their limbs, like, they're handicapped and everything, but we just feel that because of somebody else or something like that, emotional issues, we feel very depressed. But the moment we go and attend certain meetings or something like that, so we understand, when the people share their experiences about how they overcome their challenges, then we get to know that, oh my god, our problem is so small. And I remember when I was in school, one of my friends shared this quote, which I would like to share with you all, that दुनिया में कितना गम है, अपना तो फिर भी कम है. So, once you start visiting such kind of community events, you get to know that it's
Yep.
just your problem is just a seed, it's just not even like nothing in front of others' problem. So I think she can also start with going to certain kind of meetings. If she is not ready for that, I think the only solution is, for the time being, just to listen to some chanting mantras to, increase her, like, just to boost her life state. And then later on, maybe just, visiting people. And also maybe on YouTube, there's too many things available, like, if documentaries and everything is there, where you can like literally see what all is going on in the society and how people are battling it and overcoming, like, victorious. So I think I would like to share that.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Great tools, practical tools, Shikaji. And yes, that definitely helps. And it reminds me of a beautiful quotation. I read that, I was complaining about my shoes until I saw a guy without any feet. So we have to really look at it from a perspective and more prayerful more heart full of gratitude that we have. In the process, we forget all the graces and the we have received for ourselves. The fact that we can see, we can get up, we have an able body, we have a family, we have a roof above us. All those graces we forget and discount and start getting drowned in whatever that one sorrow is. A lot of ways to, I'm sure we can continue with this fascinating discussion over our portal. For the sake of time, hand it over to you, Amritamanaji, for any announcements that you might have had. I know we made a couple of important announcements, and then we will call it quits. And I look forward to having another discussion tomorrow on an aspect that troubles a lot of us. And we need to start seeing that in perspective as well. Over to you, Amritamanaji.
Yeah, the attendance tracker has been posted, so please take a moment to fill that. And yes, please do, if you are willing to do any kind of seva, please do fill that also in the attendance tracker.
Okay. Yeah. Seva, testimonial, we've already spoken about that. Whatever little seva you can extend will go a long way. So please do fill it out and we will get you coordinated. All right, we can do our closing prayers then. Thank you for a wonderful, fascinating discussion like always. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramaya सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everyone. Radhe Radhe. Have a wonderful day and a great rest of your evening. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow again to continue our discussion. Radhe Radhe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nitinji. Thank you, Shyamji. Thank you, everyone. With all the discussions, the session was wonderful. Thank you.
Bye then.
I'm closing the bridge now. Thank you, everyone.